Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Little Rock Board of Directors meeting for September 4th, 2018. Thank you all for being here as we go about to conduct the city's business. Our first matter is to ask the city clerk to read the roll. Let's see who's here.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Campuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Studla.
Here. Let me call on City Director Doris Wright for our invocation, please.
An opportunity to be here tonight to do the people's business. We do not take this job lightly, Lord, and we thank you for the privilege of service. Lord, we ask a special prayer for our police department, our firefighters, and our frontline employees. We pray that you would guide each of us through this meeting tonight and help us make right decisions that will help our constituents. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get into the agenda, we have a couple of presentations to take care of. And the first one is a Training Academy Award presentation with our police department. Mr. Moore.
Mayor, members of the board, we're very excited. As you know, we always ask departments that have accreditation components to actively pursue those. Obviously, you know that the police department overall is clear accredited. Chief Buckner has challenged other areas of his department that also have accreditation to go and apply and go through the process. So at this time, I'm very excited to ask Randy Scott, the CLIA Regional Program Manager, to come forward and make a presentation. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. I want to tell you I appreciate the opportunity to come before you all and represent the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, which is CLIA. And I'd tell you a little bit of history about it, but there's no sense in me telling you history about CLIA when your police department's been accredited since 1998 and has had 6 different reaccreditations that occur. So I think it's pretty much instilled in this city and this police department. But I would let you know that since 1979, when CLIA first started the law enforcement part, they have grown to where we also credential 4 different venues. We also now credential have accreditations for communications, for training academies, and for campus securities at colleges and universities. So with those 4, and I'll tell you, I think this one, academy accreditations, is as important, I think, as the law enforcement, because this is where they get their training, this is where they learn, this is where the officers on the field take it to the public and serve them as they graduate their academies. So with this award, I really think it's important. I kind of want to address a couple of issues. The first thing that comes through is in March or last year, in early of 17, Chief Buckner signed an agreement to start working on the academy accreditation. He went for over a year, and I think in about December he had a mock assessment where he brought in a person or 2 people to look over all their files and see how the academy was operating. And they made them change some things because they called me and I said, you know what? I'm not ready to let him come out of self-assessment and begin this process yet until I know that he's got things in order that he should have in order. And I think that's a credit to Chief Buckner. Now, I know that he came here in the year that he got here in 2014, because I've got a little history of your agency. I've been involved with Little Rock for a long time. And then I know that he's very progressive. I think I'm very proud of Chief Buckner. As a matter of fact, for as progressive as it is, he looks and researches things real well. As a matter of fact, I met him in 2015 for the first time myself in Colorado Springs at a CLIA conference, and he approached me and I said, you know, I'd like to tell you some things that leadership of agencies that are accredited and their chiefs and CEOs go through, and I think you should go to a couple of these classes. Well, after a few of those classes, he came to me and he says, you know what? Wasn't sure about this thing, but I get it. I see what it's worth, and I see how it's good it is and what it's for, and it's the outside look. We all have policies and we all have plans that we operate under, but somebody comes in and verifies it. This outside source comes in and verifies that we're doing the right job. So I believe that's what the importance of CALEA is, and for this agency. And I think the training academy, if I remember reading the report correctly, in 2015 started this thing called trauma kits and emergency first aid kits for every officer, and trained every officer in this department, and every officer coming through after that. Well, then 2017, you had a mass shooting, unfortunately, in this city, and there was 25 people shot. Those officers responded, and the first line people responded using those kits that were provided to them and trained at that time, and saved 25 lives. I think that's a credit to this police department, to the training they received for that, and a credit to Chief Buckner for instilling that in the agency. And so I'd like to read the last thing that the report said, which I think is really a true testament to what this plaque and these awards that I'm getting ready to give are. And that testament is from the team leader, who's very experienced, that came in and did the review and interviewed a lot of people here and interviewed everybody in the agency. And he wrote, one of the most seamless and non-problematic on-sites he's ever had. And he's a very, very good team leader, been around a long time. So I think that's a credit to this agency and a credit to what these employees at this police department and academy are doing. So with that, I'd like to present the award to Chief Buckner and I'd like to read, if possible, the accreditation award. And then I'll have two more right after this one, if you don't mind. This says, be it hereby known that the Little Rock, Arkansas Police Department, having fully demonstrated its voluntary commitment to the Public Safety Training Academy excellence by living up to a body of standards deemed essential to the effective training of public safety personnel, and having exemplified the best professional practices in the conduct of its responsibilities, is hereupon the recommendation of the members of the Commission awarded this certificate of accreditation effective on the 28th day of July 2018, and is recognized as an accredited public safety training academy for 4 years. Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chief, if you'll turn around.
We'll get, oh, sorry. And then I have two others that I'd like to present with this that go along. This one is from CALEA. It's a certificate of appreciation, and this one is for Chief Buckner. It says, Chief Kenton Buckner, an expression of gratitude for your contribution to the Public Safety Training Academy's accreditation program as a leader of an accredited agency, July 28, 2018. Congratulations, sir. And then one other, right quick, and I'll get out of your hair. This is a certificate of appreciation, and this is to Sergeant Jared Purifoy. If he'd come up here. This one also says, as an expression of the gratitude for your contribution to the Public Safety Training Academy's accreditation program as an accreditation manager, July 28, 2018. And I can tell you that is a pretty tough job. I've had to do that in the past. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
You bet.
Mayor, I'm used to being in court, so I was still in that train of thought. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board, Mr. Moore, Mr. Carpenter. First of all, I want to thank Randy for coming all the way from Oklahoma City to do this presentation for us. As a program manager, you probably wondering what's that job. He has two things that he does for us. He's the person that's kind of your early warning system, warning that your things are not in compliance like they're supposed to be, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and then he nudges you back online to make sure that you are reflective of what CALEA expects you to do as an accredited agency, and he does a great job of that. The heavy chiefs get to come and take the pictures and do the stuff at the podium, but I really want to recognize this fellow here. He's our sergeant over our accreditation. It's one of those jobs that's very necessary, but only a few people are willing to do it. He volunteered to go there. We greatly appreciate that he's got the right attitude. He understands accreditation. Mr. McCauley was here during that process also. And then we have a new accreditation individual, Miss Allison Walton, who's back there. But the accreditation office is the one that actually does the heavy lifting for this. Lastly, for us, it's very important that we continue down the track. We've seen a number of different things in our agency as far as accreditation is concerned. We were state accredited a year or so ago through the Arkansas Chiefs Association, and we've also signed the paperwork to begin to have our communications division accredited. I can tell you that I was not here in 1998 when we got the department. It was significantly challenging to get the training academy accredited, and I believe the communications will probably be the most challenging. But we're up for the task, so much so that we've started this clock because we believe that we will be ready when we host the CALEA conference in the fall of 2020, and we believe that we will have our communications department accredited at that conference in Little Rock, which will be monumental for us, and it will give us the TRIARC accreditation, which is the agency, training academy, and communications, which is the highest honor that CALEA actually presents. So we've started that process. Stay with us. It's going to cost us a few bucks to get there, Mr. Moore, but he's always signed off on our accreditation after a brief sermon, and we greatly appreciate the support that we've had from the board to get there too. Thank everyone for that.
Okay,
I forgot there was a couple other folks here.
You've got several
that
people here, Chief.
I didn't see them. So Captain Paxton, who is the captain over the training academy, heavy lifting from their department. Lieutenant Rothwell is the lieutenant in the training academy. They were the ones who were specifically responsible for it with that division. And then young lady, Miss Green here, volunteered. She did volunteer to be the accreditation manager for communications. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, the next presentation is one that I'll make, and I'll go down to the podium. This is an honor that I get quite frequently, and that's to issue proclamations for significant events and happenings that go on not only in our city but around the country, and today is no exception. This is a proclamation dealing with the issue of Hunger Action Month, and it is actually a proclamation that's signed by every one of the board members, which is significant. Usually I'm the one that gets to do the signing, and now I've got 10 of my colleagues to also assist, which I think really places a tremendous amount of import on the issue. So it reads as follows: Know ye all people by these presents greetings. Whereas hunger and poverty are issues of grave concern in the United States, the state of Arkansas, and the city of Little Rock. And whereas the city of Little Rock is committed to taking steps to raise awareness about the need to solve hunger in every part of the city and to provide additional resources that the citizens of Little Rock need. And whereas the city of Little Rock is committed to working with the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, the Arkansas Food Bank, and other hunger agencies to educate people about the role of food banks, food pantries, and hunger relief programs in addressing hunger. And whereas Arkansas ranks second highest in the nation for household food insecurity and third highest for childhood food insecurity, according to Feeding America's MAP, the Meal Gap of 2018. And whereas more than 77,800 individuals, which is nearly 20%, and nearly 20,000 children, 22%, experience hunger annually in Pulaski County, many of whom rely on food assistance from hundreds of partner agencies. And whereas the Emergency Food Network, comprised of hundreds of hunger relief organizations across the state last year provided more than 54 million pounds of food to vulnerable children, seniors, adults, and families in Arkansas. And whereas hunger organizations across the country, including the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, the Arkansas Food Bank, will host events and activities throughout the month of September to bring awareness to the issue of hunger and encourage community involvement to help alleviate hunger here in the city of Little Rock and other cities across the state. Now, therefore, I, Mark Stodela, Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, and the City of Little Rock Board of Directors do hereby proclaim September as Hunger Action Month here in the City of Little Rock. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hands and seals on this 4th day of September 2018. And I'd like to go ahead and present this to a couple of folks here. Nancy? Thank you. And Patty, are you going to be in this picture too? All right, turn around.
You're no hand at this. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, you want to speak? Nancy Conley?
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the board and the mayor for their commitment to helping us relieve hunger in Pulaski County, in Little Rock, and in Arkansas. It's critical to families. It's critical to children. It's critical to education. So I hope that we can depend on all of you all the time to help us in that journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and thanks for all you do. I know we've got a tremendous amount of volunteers throughout the community that continue to work on this, but it only stresses and identifies the importance of doing this, not only just in the month of September, but every month of the year. So thank you so much. Okay, that concludes our presentations. We can now move on to our agenda. The first matter is try it again. Yes, Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor. Nancy, thank you. Vice Mayor, for your work behind the scenes. Thank you for the proclamation. But Mayor, I know you and I talked about some of the demographic challenges we have in Little Rock. And conversely, areas of our city where a disproportionate number of convenience stores, we have an equally high childhood obesity rate. I mean, it ranks just as high, third, sometimes even certain parts of our community, number one in the country. So conversely, while we have that as a challenge, places in our community where we have disproportionate number of convenience stores that sell junk food, don't sell healthy fruits and vegetables, and are considered food desert, we need to make that recognition as well.
Very good, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Carpenter.
you're on modifications now.
I'm about to go there, yes.
Item number 20 on the board's agenda is a zoning ordinance that deals with a planned commercial development and a planned development residential in a part of Southwest Little Rock. The applicant has requested that the planned development residential be withdrawn and that the board move ahead only with the planned commercial development tonight. The planning department has redrafted the ordinance. I've got one here that I've got to give to the clerk that strikes out part of the title because it still references the planned development residential. But the request is that this one be substituted. I think Director Wyrick is going to make that motion, and that these be placed on the grouped items instead of a separate item.
So we are eliminating which
Number
portion?
20 will come off as it is, and in its place will come the amendment, which I think just got passed out a minute ago. And there are words in the title that deal with the planned development residential. I have stricken them on the copy that I gave to the city clerk so that it only deals with the planned commercial
We're only dealing with the planned commercial development.
Right.
Okay, very well. 1 minute, please. So first off is Director Wyrick. Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to move item 20 from the separate items to the group's items.
As the substitute ordinance has been
Right. And you should
handed out.
have a copy of it at your desk.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to substitute the ordinance that was handed out, number 21,628, dealing only with a planned commercial development, and put that in as a new number 20. And there's a second to that. Is there any discussion? Director Hendricks, do you have discussion on that matter? All right, go right ahead, please.
I asked to make a comment, and then you accepted a motion. So
No,
now
ma'am. Director Wyrick had her light on first, so.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Mr. Moore. I watch him quite often. Were you pleased with what was happening?
I am, Director Hendricks. The staff is supportive of the approach.
But will you stop making those faces? Thank you.
You know, Director Hendricks likes to watch everybody's face to see what they really think. Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to substitute indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Very good. All right, now we can move on to one other modification, which is a withdrawal at the staff's request of item number 6, a resolution dealing with eminent domain. Apparently that issue has been resolved. Is there a motion to withdraw that from the agenda? Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. That item will be withdrawn. Okay, we can now move on to a reading of the consent agenda, items 1 through 10, with the exception of resolution number 6. Please.
The consent agenda consists of a motion to approve the minutes of the June 19th, 2018 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. A resolution to set September 18th, 2018 as the date of public hearing to consider the abandonment of all that part of Lehman Lane located in Section 1 and Section 12 of Township 1 North and Route 14 West in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, lying south of Block 2, Iris Addition, less than except the north 110 feet thereof, containing approximately 3,190 linear feet of the 30-foot wide Lehman Lane road right-of-way, and for the purposes, a resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Burkhalter Technologies Incorporated in amount not to exceed $208,864.80 for the Brown Street Improvement Project and for the purposes, funding from the 2012 3/8-cent capital improvement sales tax. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Burkhalter Technologies Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $4,248,464.68 for the Canis Road Improvement Project from Shackelford Road to Embassy Drive and for other purposes, funding from the 2012 3/8-cent capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Mobley Contractors Incorporated in amount not to exceed $8,524,486.80 for the Geyer Springs Railroad Grade Separation Project and for the purposes, funding from the 2012 3/8-cent capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to authorize the city manager to award a professional engineering services contract for the design of the 2019 to the 2021 capital improvement projects, funding from the proceeds of the 3/8-cent capital improvement sales and compensating use tax and the 2018 capital improvement bonds for street and drainage and for the purposes, funding from the 2012 3/8-cent capital improvement sales tax and the 2018 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Hasty Awards in the amount of $73,534 for the purchase of the 2019 Little Rock Marathon Finishers Medals and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with SCI Technologies Incorporated, doing business as SkyCop, in an amount not to exceed $27,496 for the purchase of a new license plate reader system for the Little Rock Police Department and one fixed single-lane camera for the benefit of and reimbursement by the River Ridge Road Property Owners Association to maintain the bid prices for cameras and software for a one-year period and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to participate in the National League of Cities Service Line Warranty Program and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Is there discussion? Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Bruce, on resolution number 5, I asked a couple of questions last week. And John, I don't know if I had this level of specificity with respect to these questions because this project is eagerly anticipated, long awaited, but I have a couple more questions that I'd like to pose before we move on. One of them is easily answerable, if that's such a word, and the other one may take a little bit more thought and conceptual thinking, John.
Mr. Honeywell.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if I asked this question last week, but one, thank you for your presentation last week and your work on this project. The question that we can easily answer is, when is the initiation date? When's the start date? And the one that we may not be able to answer readily is the completion date, because there's all kinds of environmental factors that we have to factor in, whether infrastructure or weather-related, whatever. So the first one is, when is the initiation date for this? And secondly, if you can answer this, when is the completion date?
Okay. This project, as far as getting the construction started,
Yes, sir.
once this, assuming it gets approved tonight at the board, we'll get contracts finalized, signed, all of the other paperwork in place. We'll have a pre-construction meeting with the contractor, notice to proceed. So you're probably talking at least 2 to 3 weeks before they even have a notice to proceed. And then, so you're probably talking a month or more.
From today's date?
From today, before they would ever probably even start mobilizing to the site. With the construction of this project, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to look back at our bidding documents as far as the time frame that we allowed in the contract to get it constructed. This is a pretty significant project. Plus, you're working in conjunction with a highly utilized railway system that you're building a bridge over. So, if I had to guess off the top of my head, which I don't like to do, but it's probably at least a year, if not longer, for a construction time.
Okay, and your last two comments is a perfect segue to a couple more questions. One is, Bruce, on the bidding process, did we utilize RFQs, RFPs, or did we do a sole source bidding? And secondly, John, have we acquired all the property that we need, the property acquisition? Do we have everything in place, Bruce, to get this up and running and moving efficiently and smoothly?
We do, and we typically wouldn't bring something before you if we hadn't acquired all the necessary right of way, either permanent or temporary. And then what was this?
The issuance of the contract, did we utilize RFQ? We did an RFP?
This was done through a read aloud bid process.
Okay.
It was here's the list of things that we want constructed. They provide itemized bids for those, and whoever has the lowest bid based on that bid documents is who gets awarded this project.
That's it for me. Thanks, my friends.
And I'll get you specific contract times.
Great, I appreciate it.
Okay, Director Hendricks, you had your light on earlier. Did you have a comment or question? All right, very good. All right, we've had a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. The consent agenda is adopted. We can now move on to citizen communication, which allows 3 minutes for a specific item that's not been previously brought to our attention and is not on the board agenda to be communicated to us. I have 3 cards. The first card is from Keith Gillen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Board Directors. The landlord-produced trash is killing our neighborhoods. They routinely dump entire contents of a house on the curb when a renter moves out. The sanitation department cannot keep up with their trash output, and trying to is leaving normal residential yard waste left only partially picked up. In Broadmoor alone, there is always at least 10 and often 25 sites of huge, and I mean huge, piles of landlord-produced trash. The landlord-produced trash pickups by sanitation is in the thousands of pickups per year. These huge piles stay for weeks or even months. These neighborhoods honestly look like war zones. By landlord-produced trash, I mean anything from a person owning one rent house to LLCs owning 50 houses and realty companies owning or managing hundreds of houses. Their unique trash is carpet, couches, appliances, bags of clothes, and anything else imaginable. All this is picked up for free by the city. In other words, these businesses have almost exclusive use of the city's one and only shovel truck, and for free. The only other exception I see is for storm damage. It is time the landlords pay a small fee for this service. This trash has caused our property values in Broadmoor to dramatically decrease. And asking landlords to pay $50 per large pickup is a bargain and will be recouped by the landlords by increasing their property values. In 2004, I paid $74,500 for my house. I had to sell in 2015 due to health reasons, and after 8 months on the market, my house sold for $59,000, despite many, many improvements. The decrease in value was because the neighborhood was and is absolutely filthy. Please do what is only fair for the taxpayers in these affected neighborhoods and change the policies which allow this unfair practice to continue. Many established policies have to be changed to allow charging a fee. I understand this, but these policies are archaic, and while I do not have the stats to say what revenues would be collected for the sanitation department, you do at your disposal, and I expect analyzing these statistics would show anywhere from $2,000 to $1 million a year could be collected, and no reasonable landlord would complain. The landlords, LLCs, etc., are themselves amazed that they are charged no fee. I have talked to many of them personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gillen. We have a couple of comments or questions. Director Hendricks, you're recognized.
Will you tell that gentleman to come back?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you. What you just said, I've been saying it for nearly 10 years. Right now, we are about, $3 million in the hole as far as finances in this city. I don't know why this board has not cooperated to do just what you're asking. So maybe since you're here, it will happen. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. I was very nervous talking.
You don't have to be.
Director Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carpenter, you heard what he said, and Director Hendricks has raised this point. I've raised this point. What would be the procedure that we would have to take in order to implement a fee for these property owners or landlords or LLCs?
Director Wright, in order to get a fee that we can also obtain a lien on the property with that can lead to the sale of the property if the fee's not paid, requires a 7-day notice under the statute. I think that we could charge these people with illegal dumping, which is an offense, and we could seek the tipping fees and the cost of transporting the information, the disposable goods to the landfill as a part of the cost of the case, and hope that the court would grant it to us. If we did that, that would be going through environmental court. It would not guarantee us the lien to be able to attach the property if it were not paid.
Okay, what about the business license fees? Many of these houses are not registered. Could we attach a fee, an additional fee to that?
In terms of a business license in Arkansas for municipalities, those are revenue measures and not regulatory measures. I don't know what is meant by not registered because we do have an ordinance that says that you're supposed to register any rental facilities, and the failure to do that, I think, and have an agent that can receive service here, I think that can lead it to being declared a nuisance in and of itself, whether it's trash or some other issue.
So our process to get a fee charge to the landlords for dumping would be for us to amend. Walk me through the steps. What do we do?
I think in many of these cases, particularly the ones that Director Hendricks has pointed out before, the people, and as the gentleman just said, it's not like they've got something on the side of the street. There is an ordinance forthcoming relatively quickly to deal with a problem we've got with yard waste and how that's defined so that you can't leave the whole tree on the side of the road anymore. But the problem is that they don't just have it there in a small pile. It takes up a big part of the street, so it's either interfering with that right of way or it's interfering with the sidewalk. That's illegal dumping. And we can assess that against the owner of the property for the things that are dumped there. We don't have to wait. It's an offense. It's a public safety issue, and we can take it off. We can't get a lien on the property for doing that. So we would be up to the mercy of the environmental court to impose a fine and to return our costs to us.
Well, the pile that I saw today on Cleveland Street was on the sidewalk, and it was not in the street, but it was a massive amount.
Yes, ma'am.
Bed, what looked like a dresser, busted up, chest of drawers, chairs, all this stuff on the sidewalk. How do we get the landlord, the owner, if it's a rent house, charged a fee? That picture there.
It's like I just said, they will get the citation for the ordinance on illegal dumping.
So you would consider that picture, what you see there, to be illegal dumping?
Yes, ma'am.
So our code officers can cite that house, that property?
I think so. I don't know the exact answer to that question because right in front of me I don't have the provision, but I think that they can do that, and then we could haul it if we wish to. We can't be guaranteed the repayment of it with a lien on the property, and it would be assessed against the owner of the property where it is.
Could we assess it to the business license if it wants?
No.
Once they come back and apply for another business license, that's a fee that they have to pay to clear it.
No, ma'am.
Then that's according to state law.
Yes, ma'am.
I want Mr. Gillen to hear the challenges that we have faced, because as Director Hendricks says, she's been talking about it for 10 years. I've been talking about it for 10 years, and we keep coming up against the same wall. And I don't believe that our code officers have clarity, because I'm not clear based upon what you just told me. So I don't see how they can cite somebody with a citation if they're not clear.
Okay, Mr. Moore, if you would, why don't you help for the public to clarify the process and the procedure that the city has currently, and what our sanitation fees are providing for in terms of pickup.
Sure. Mr. Carpenter talks about citation, and as you all know, Arkansas is a strong property rights state, and I think if we were to cite this address for illegal dumping, we have to give notice, and that's a 7-day notice. But the expectations from, I think, the citizens and from you all, because the message I got, and I can understand it, is get this picked up ASAP. So now when you go by 311 South Cleveland today, that's gone. But so now, since we picked it up, and to Tom's point about, well, maybe charging a tipping fee, well, these trucks are out all day. There is no way that we're going to be able to determine at 1311 South Cleveland, when those trucks go across the scales, how much this particular load was. So I don't see that as a viable option. So as you all know, I mean, we can't file a lien on this address because we picked it up and we hauled it off. And so that's the balance. I know y'all are frustrated. I'm frustrated about it, but this whole issue of giving notice, and then, I mean, I hear from each of you about once a week about, can we get this picked up? Have we given notice, whether it's a code issue or even, as the vice mayor knows, dealing with some businesses that are operating as far as how much notice we have to give. And again, that's state law, and that's nothing that's unique to Little Rock. But, I mean, this is a challenge. I mean, and this affects the quality of life of those people that live on Cleveland. I have no doubt. But my job is to have a system in place to get it picked up, and we got it picked up. But we also know, and there's a flip side of that, is these landlords know I can dump all this stuff on the curb, and guess what? City's gonna pick it up. And so, I mean, if we decided to go to citation, we'd have issued a notice to that today. It'd be there next week. And then we try to issue a citation, and that's another 7 days or something. So I mean, that's the challenge. I mean,
Well, Mr. Moore, would you explain the procedure that if a procedure were followed properly, a person could have all this picked up if they had notified the city ahead of time and set it out on the curb, correct?
correct.
So I want people to understand that in this instance, obviously, you probably have a landlord who had a tenant that just walked out in the middle of the night and left everything in the house, and they're cleaning out the house. And our current policy,
Allows them to
which
do
if
it.
we want to change it, is certainly, I think, eligible for debate, is as long as they give us notice and put it out on the curb, then we pick it up. Isn't that correct?
Well, can we change our
Well, I
policy?
mean, I'm sure you could deal with it based on quantity, or, we're not going to pick up mattresses, or, I mean, there's a variety of ways you could try to minimize this. But right now, if somebody wants to get rid of their, I saw a refrigerator out, not, a couple days ago, and I'm only hoping that they had called and said, hey, come pick up this broken refrigerator. We don't want it anymore. And then we would come out and pick it up and take it and haul it away.
And that's a great example, because on Wednesdays, that's what we do. We pick up appliances. You call in 311 and say, I've got a refrigerator that's out on the curb, or we actually encourage you not to put it out there until the day before. But that's all we do. We have a list of, all right, here are our appliances that are on the curb. But I mean, that's the challenge we have. If we'd have issued a notice that Mr. Gillen, that stuff would still be there next week. I mean, that's just the statutes that we have to operate under. It's not, again, unique to Little Rock. It's a state statutes. And we have tried at the legislature, as a lot of you all know, to try to get that tweaked to where we can go straight to citation, and that never gets out of committee close.
Director Adcock, you're next, please.
Mr. Moore, the people a couple doors up from me had 2 trees out, and they called and they had them picked up, and I understand they paid $58 for 2 trees to be picked up. Then a week later, they cut down another tree, and they called and they paid to have that tree picked up. And now there's 2 trees out there again to be picked up. When did we decide $58 for 2 trees? I mean, if you ask the man cutting down your trees, how much is it if you haul them off, he would tell you anywhere from $500 to $600 to haul them off and dump them. And sure, they want us to do it. If we're going to go do it for $58 and the tree trimmer wants $500, so where did we come up with $58 if that's the price to pick up 2 trees on the curb?
I'm going to ask Mr. Honeywell to come forward. I really do think it's based on the volume and the size, because the board, when we passed the last rate increase in 2004, said we want to pick up, the ordinance defines how big a tree is. So, John.
Mr. Honeywell, I don't mind a discount, but the difference between $58 and $500 is a bit much.
We base the fee that we charge people for those oversized trees, trunks, limbs, huge piles of trees. That's based on the actual volume or quantity of that item. It's based on cubic yards. And we have a certain fee that we charge, a certain amount we charge per what we estimate that volume of waste to be. And that's our rate that we charge.
Well, this was 2 trees, and they was big trees, the first one, and she told me that she paid $58. So I would like for us to look at that, because if a tree trimmer is going to charge $500, I think we could maybe charge a little more than $58.
Okay? We'll be happy to look into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Hendricks is next, please.
I was really first. I have to remind the mayor.
Director
because
Hendricks, this little machine does not lie.
Okay, no, but this conversation had to do with an ordinance, and even though Tom went through all of this and that, but I watched the gentleman's facial expression when we were talking, when Bruce was saying, well, we can't do it. Well, why are we here? Okay, and Tom, it was no need for you to go the step through the court. I'm asking that Mr. Moore put together an ordinance to satisfy exactly what the gentleman has talked about and what Director Wright and I have talked about for 10 years. And, all that other stuff, we don't need it. Can you do it? If you can't do it, then somebody needs to take this city to court.
Director Hendricks, I think, and I know the city attorney has been working on an ordinance that you requested a little while back.
Yeah,
I don't
got it right
know, I mean, I'm not sure what he's going to come out with, because the state statute is pretty clear on property owners' rights.
Let's do that, Mr. Moore.
Well, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
I mean,
but all that jaw jerking, that's what we call it in my day. And we don't need to hear that. Let's put something before this board if it has to go through the state or wherever. It's ridiculous. And he's talking about what happened in his area. He ought to come south of Roosevelt Road. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And I think, Mr. Moore, so you're suggesting that Tom will put an ordinance together, whatever we need. Is that what you're going to do, Tom? Okay, so it's been 2 or 3 years ago that you started on one, you never finished. What do you want me to do? Thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, I probably call you a couple of times a week about this very issue. And I agree with the gentleman. It's destroying our neighborhoods. They look terrible. And I know Ronnie Lowe came before us not too long ago, and you all are in the process of having somebody do a study to determine what it's going to cost to pick up all this stuff and how many people and how many trucks and all that. I don't believe we have enough trucks or enough people to keep up to speed with everything that's being thrown out on the curb. And on a normal week when people are throwing stuff off, we can't do it. And then we have a storm that comes in like we had a few weeks ago, and that just really exasperates the whole issue. I think one of the things that's Irma's talked about and Doris has talked about is the rental property. And if you own rental property, that's a business. That's different than a residential person pulling stuff out. If it's a business owner, is there not a different way that can be approached? And maybe somebody's already asked this question. Maybe I'm asking it in a different way. But that's a piece of their operating cost to run a business. So if we know where all the rental property is in the city, and we have something like this at 1311 Cleveland, can we not immediately do something to the business owner of that property to take care of it?
I just think that, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a result of the city picking that up today, are there any repercussions for the owner of that property?
This is his business, and that's his cost to do business, is to clean up his property and make it ready for the next person to come in.
The problem that you deal with, I was just looking at the state statute for this type of situation. It requires 10 days notice and an order from a court to go pick up the goods. And then if that isn't done, the city can go do it. And the sheriff has to serve the order, which I have to suggest probably would not be a high priority warrant for a sheriff to serve. So we are going to look at that.
I would not want that to sit there for 10 days.
That's
Exactly.
the
I mean,
I mean, that's the bad part about this whole situation is the fact that people have to look at it for 10 days.
so to answer the first part of your question, I've authorized 2 additional rear loaders and a new crew of 7 that would just be focusing on this type of, in addition to what we're already doing, but I did that probably about 3 weeks ago, just to be able to get more staff on the streets to try to help pick this up quicker. But I think it's important that the board understand is that means we're not putting liens on property. We're not doing any. That's the balance we're trying to strike. Is that we're just going to pick it up, but that also means there's no penalties for the landlord or the owner of the property.
But can we not issue a citation at the time that we do that, even though it says 10 days later? I tell you another thing I'm worried about is a study that you all are doing to see what the cost is to do all this work in the city. We're going to start charging that to all of the people in the city, and it's going to cost everybody a lot more money.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember we haven't raised solid waste rates since 2004 at all, and so yeah, we are doing the study to try to determine what it would cost to continue to not only what we're doing now but to enhance it. But that doesn't deal with the other issue of landlord responsibility and owner responsibility.
Okay, it's very complex. I know it is. I don't want to see it on the curb. I drive through neighborhoods all the time and report stuff because I know the neighbors don't want to see it. We've passed out some flyers in some neighborhoods so they can give them to their neighbors and they know to call 311. But some of it is lack of knowledge, and then some of it is, well, we put it out there and the city will pick it up. So it's a complex issue.
And that's, I mean, I think part of the issue is that solid waste fee entitles a person to follow what our procedures are, to call the city and say, I've got this stuff, I want to get rid of it. And they say, okay, we're going to pick it up on, X day, put it out on the day before. And they can put that entire amount that you just saw out there. And that's what the city is provided for in that solid waste fee. Now, if we want to change that, then that is a legitimate policy question about whether or not you want to have your solid waste fee picking up either that quantity or that volume of waste that's there or not. But right now, I mean, what we're complaining about is the fact that they're not giving us notice. They're just putting it out there. They're not giving us the proper notice to allow our people with our trucks to pick it up then the very next day. That's what's not happening. Vice Mayor Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bruce, just a quick follow-up. You mentioned that we had gone to the legislature a while back and it had been hung up. How many years ago was that?
Probably, Governor Beebe was in office, so that goes back that far. But I mean, it really was I describe it as DOA. It wasn't even, we didn't get any traction. And we had a lot of people from the neighborhoods that were out there, being very supportive. But they said, you're going to give, in order, again, this is in order to have some repercussions for the landlords or the owners, you got to give proper notice. And they've said that's 7 days notice and then a citation.
Thank you.
Director Adcock, you're next, please.
I don't have mine on. I didn't have mine on.
You do have it on. Not anymore. Director Wright, you're next, please.
Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, I had submitted a draft of a letter that I wanted you to review and see if we could attach that to the business license. of these real estate management companies or people that getting a business license to operate a rental unit in our city, and just appealing to them from a standpoint of it would make their property look better. It'd make their property worth more if they cooperated with our policies. Whatever happened to that letter? Mr. Moore, can you?
There was a meeting a few weeks ago. I don't think Tom attended, and I couldn't attend, but James Jones and representatives from Housing and Public Works and our Public Relations Office. And so we're crafting something that will go out in the water bills, that's similar to what you have been talking about. Just sort of, all right, here are the rules. We encourage you to follow them, and
Okay.
that should go out within the next 30 days.
Well, is there also any way that we could appeal to them and from the standpoint of including language in their lease agreement with their tenants, since they're operating a business, they're relying on that sanitation fee, which somebody is having to pay, and I'm sure the tenant is paying it, that to call 311 to work with us so that the property in the neighborhood stays up to a certain standard.
And I think that's something that Tom can look at, but my sense is it's usually not the tenant that's loading it up and putting it on the curb, it's the owner.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And-
But he has to know that it's making his property worth less. It's pulling down the neighborhood values, but it's also making him not be able to get tenants that are going to maintain his property. So it's like a vicious cycle. And it would seem to me that if I own this house and I want to rent it, then I'm going to make sure that the property around it and my house maintains a certain standard, so the value will be there. It's just, if you just look at it from a dollars and cents standpoint.
But again, and I think several of y'all have said this, and I tend to agree, is that the expectations of these owners of this rental property, I'm going to put it out on the curb and the city's going to pick it up.
Okay, well, is there any way for us to charge an additional fee onto the sanitation fee for rental property, Mr. Carpenter? If I got a rent house, my sanitation fee that's being charged to me to that address is higher.
The rates that can be charged for properties for these things have to be related to the property, and I do think that the rate study that they're getting ready to do will be looking at apartment complexes differently than they'll look at a residential structure for a single family. How much more after that, you've got to have some reasonability in that, but that's part of the rate.
Well, the
study.
reasonability is it's as a business, and that's what we categorizing it as,
That's
so
right,
my fee would be higher.
We have found some cases out of another federal circuit in which cities have declared violations, trash, calls from the police and such, and if a landlord gets so many violations during the course of a year, then they're not allowed to rent the property. The most recent cases have tried to sue the cities for a taking as a result of that, and the cities to date have won.
Well, that's a
But-
new one.
And we have looked at that and considered it. The one thing that they don't have, if I remember correctly from the state where this came from, is they don't have a constitutional provision that starts out the right of property is above all other rights, as does the Arkansas Constitution.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Director Hendricks, you're next, please.
Please, Mr. Carpenter, will you bring something forward? How long will it take, Mr. Moore? 2 weeks, 2 months, or what? To put an ordinance or something together?
I think the one that's going to take care, the problem with some of the yard waste issue, I think you can have on the next board meeting. But that's all it will deal with. I mean,
When would it deal with the mattresses, the springs, the furniture, the refrigerators, the bathtubs?
I haven't got that figured out. I think I can take care of the yard waste in 2 weeks.
Because that's really the crucial thing. The household contents is what's on the curb, mostly. I'm finished. Good luck, young man, whoever he was. Good luck.
Director Hines, you're next, please.
I'll try not to belabor this. Bruce, Tom, what about just a little public shaming? We've got pictures and we know these locations. Why don't we catalog and do it? And we can start putting a hit list of the #1 offenders that have business licenses that have rental properties in this town. They're putting this stuff out on the curb.
As your lawyer, I would advise against using the phrase hit list, but
All right, a
after
most
that
wanted
point,
list.
there's nothing at all wrong with saying this is a property that's rented by John Doe and this is how he's done it. It can be done.
Right. I'm just saying, sometimes when we can't get our way with the legislature, maybe a little public square shaming might do something to get some of these landlords to do the do-right rule.
Director Hines, I do have to quickly remind you of two things. One, my electoral history, and two, the fact that we get the arguments, and I have never tried to sort them out. The tenant did it, the landlord didn't do it, the landlord did it, the tenant didn't do it. Somebody else put it in front of my property, and that's not where it came from.
And let me ask you this, just to pose a question. So if we were to catch somebody taking a pile of trash like that and dumping it, if we caught them in the act, just dumping it on the side of the road or wherever, that'd be a criminal offense, right? We could stop them, arrest them.
That's for that, yes.
Okay, but if I want to do the same thing on a piece of property I own, there's nothing we can do unless we give you 7 days.
10 days.
Well, whatever the note.
Well,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's
I
one
mean, it's
statute
still
that says
dumping.
7,
It's
one
just
that says 10. There's no way we can do that and be able to attach the lien, is what I was saying earlier. While y'all were talking, I was looking at another state statute on illegal dumping, and it says 10 days notice, and then you go to the sheriff. That's what I was mentioning a minute ago.
okay. All right, that's all I got.
Mr. Gillum, I want to let you know you've allowed us to spend at least more than the 30 minutes that's allotted for citizen communication on this one issue. It's something that obviously we're concerned about as well. Mr. Moore, Mr. Gillum does live in the Broadmoor area. Perhaps you can get our code officer over there to do a specific sweep and see whether or not we've got we've got a bunch of trash piles there that need to get picked up. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rakop wants to talk to us about social media of the Little Rock Police Department.
Well, before I start, if Director Hines will send me some pictures, I'll put that on my blog and we'll have a new column on there. In the last week or so, there have been some startling developments and revelations involving Chief Kenton Tremar Buckner and the Little Rock Police Department. The first one I'll mention is a positive one. It seems our learned city attorney, Mr. Carpenter, was finally able to convince the police department to stop violating the First Amendment rights of certain citizens by preventing them from posting comments on their social media pages. Perhaps telling Mr. Carpenter of my intention to file a civil rights violation action played a small part, but I'd also like to thank him for saving me time in doing so and also preventing the city another embarrassing legal defeat. As you're no doubt aware, I have filed 2 lawsuits against Chief Buckner over his and his agency's failing to provide public records in response to Freedom of Information requests. Both lawsuits resulted in findings that my rights were violated under the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act and that there was a failure to comply with the AFOIA, resulting in orders by the court to hand over public records I sought. In the last lawsuit, Chief Buckner was cautioned by the Honorable Judge Mackie Pierce that if he were back before him again on the same or similar thing, he was going to do as much as he could to hold him or the department responsible for not complying with the law. Incredibly, Chief Buckner told Judge Pierce that there had been a failure in leadership and that it falls on him. We also had the release of a transcript of a deposition of Chief Buckner in which he admitted that he uses a disgusting racial slur, a slur that he used to fire several recruits for using. We also had confirmation that he uses the pseudonym Negro Pappy on some online dating sites, and it is believed that he uses his city-provided cell phone to respond and hold conversations concerning his extracurricular dating activities. These actions portray him, his department, and in turn the city in a bad light and appear to violate several of his department's rules, regulations, and general orders. We have the matter of rogue officers and a crooked snitch fabricating drug buys, which taints legitimate cases, causing responsible individuals to question any case involving the snitch and the officers. The actions of those officers have resulted in a federal lawsuit, which is brewing into a class action status. We also have the ongoing matter of an off-duty officer at the club telling 3 different versions of an incident only to have video evidence call his truthfulness into question. Add to this the lawsuit filed by black police officers, and what we have is a police department imploding on itself due to a failure in leadership. Having the CEO of LRPD, as Chief Buckner likes to refer to himself, sue twice for violating our transparency laws, and the alleged legal activity of a number of officers is something his boss, City Manager Bruce Moore, must address. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Richardson, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, Mayor, my seatmate is having a deleterious effect on me. My light was on before Mr. Rakup came up. It goes back to the point that Mr. Gillian was making, and Lance, I think that's a fantastic, great idea about the public shaming. I think, unfortunately, the reality is that a lot of these homeowners don't live in the state. Is that correct? A lot, if not the majority of these homeowners don't live here, so public shaming them. I live in Minnesota. You can't public shame me in Minnesota by talking about what I'm doing in Little Rock.
Well, I did a little research while we were talking about that, and so the owner of the Cleveland address is Arkansas Rental and Development LLC in North Little Rock.
But we do have a significant number of these homeowners or businesses that are located out of the state. And Lance, I think that's a great idea, but I think that's one of the challenges and barriers that we would have to deal with.
But the board did pass a rental registration ordinance a long time ago that says you got to have a registered agent, and
Sure.
so then you get into the fact: are you shaming the registered agent or the owner? You know?
Great point.
More on this issue? Really? Okay.
I got
Director
a question.
Wright, go ahead.
A question I forgot to ask, or I heard somebody say this, and it just kind of flitted across my mind. Are we compiling a list of the rental properties in Little Rock, or do we have that?
We do.
Okay, single family, and you can tell me, say in Broadmoor, how many single family rental houses
Well,
are there?
keep in mind, we've got an ordinance on the books that says that you're supposed to register and you pay a fee based on the number of rental units you have. I think there's not here. So we know that number, but I also could tell you that there's probably people that own rental property in Little Rock that hadn't registered.
Oh, I'm sure, but that's what I was trying to get to. Do we have any sense of how actually many I'm not talking about rental unit apartments. I'm talking about single family rent houses.
We do, and we can break that out.
Can you break that out for me? Thank you.
Okay, one more card for citizen communication. Jerry Bailey. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Directors, Assistant Mayor, City Manager. My name is Jerry Bailey, and I work with United Cerebral Palsy of Arkansas. And my comment this evening is just a simple invitation from all of the representatives from each ward to maybe visit our facilities for adult services, work opportunities, and learn about possible synergies for the objectives of the city and our organization, United Cerebral Palsy. Jerry Bailey. L-E-Y, that's correct.
Mr. Bailey, are you the director of the United Cerebral Palsy?
I'm not the director, I'm just over business and community development
Okay,
for
very
United
good. Thank
Cerebral
you.
Palsy. I'm sorry.
Are you on 36th Street or Barrow or where?
We do have a campus on 36th Street,
I
but
know.
my office is on Rodney Parham.
Okay. And there's one on Barrow as well. Is that you all were
We're on
assisted living?
36th Street. We're in North Little Rock. And then we also have enterprises as well, Gone for Good Document Destruction, United Cerebral Palsy, Recycled Materials, CP Buttons, and those are housed off of Distribution Drive.
Yeah, I was by the 36th Street property today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the widening of the sidewalks and
Yes,
all
yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah. And that's actually helped
I
a
know.
lot of our service recipients that are not mobile.
Yes.
And also service recipients that move around with wheelchairs and other assisted walking devices.
That was a project that they told me they wanted in 2007. They wanted their own mobility to be able to get around to the Walmart and so
Yes.
forth.
Yeah.
And so we've been working on that, and we finally got it finished.
Yes.
And now they don't have to be out in the middle of the road in their
Exactly.
wheelchair. So
Exactly.
I am fully aware of that, and I
Yes.
would like to sit down with your president to see how we could work together to get
Awesome.
them more involved in some activities that are going on in the neighborhood.
Yes.
So I will be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Okay, that concludes our citizen communication. We can now move on to our planning and development items. Vice Mayor Webb first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we have item 13 separate?
Yeah, we can hold that separately.
Thank you.
All right, we have our grouped items, items 11 through 18 with the exception of 13. First reading, please.
And 20. An ordinance
And,
to approve
Excuse me,
item 20.
and we added item 20, yes.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Sonny's Car Wash, short form PCD, located at 7706 Cantrell Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Riverdale RH 5B, revised short form PCD, located on the east side of Riverfront Drive, just south of Morgan Keegan Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Calhoun Short Form PDR, located at 4208 Fairview Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled Huff Plumbing, short form PCD, located at 11,800 to 11,804 Canis Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1873 South Cross Street, short form PDR, located at 1873 South Cross Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned residential district titled Bronson Townhome, short form PDR, located at 1902 East 4th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to grant a franchise to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation as a fiber optics and communication services provider within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to prevent the use of city rights-of-way and city property and airspace, and for the purposes. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district and planned commercial district titled The Village at Bella Tierra, long form PCD, located on the northeast corner of Stagecoach Road and Alexander Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Sonny's Car Wash, short form PCD, located at 7706 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Riverdale RH 5B, revised short form PCD, located on the east side of Riverfront Drive, just south of Morgan Keegan Drive. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Calhoun short form PDR, located at 4208 Fairview Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Huff Plumbing, short form PCD, located at 11,800 to 11,804 Canis Road. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1873 South Cross Street, short form PDR, located at 1873 South Cross Street. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Bronson Townhomes, short form PDR, located at 1902 East 4th Street. An ordinance to grant a franchise to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation as a fiber optics and communication services provider within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to prevent the use of city rights-of-way and city property and airspace. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled The Village at Bella Tierra, long form PCD, located on the northeast corner of Stagecoach Road and Alexander Road. Second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Sunny's Car Wash, short form PCD, located at 7706 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Riverdale RH 5B, revised short form PCD, located on the east side of Riverfront Drive, just south of Morgan Keegan Drive. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Calhoun, short form PDR, located at 4208 Fairview Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled Huff Plumbing, short form PCD, located at 11,800 to 11,804 Canis Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 1873 South Cross Street, short form PDR, located at 1873 South Cross Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Bronson Townhomes, short form PDR, located at 1902 East 4th Street. An ordinance to grant a franchise to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation as a fiber optics and communication services provider within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to permit the use of city rights-of-way and city property and airspace. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled The Village at Bella Tierra, long form PCD, located on the northeast corner of Stagecoach Road and Alexander Road. Third and final reading.
Okay, Director Hendricks, did you have your microphone on? If you would hit your turn your microphone on, please. Go ahead, please.
To go green, okay. On number 17, it has Brunson Townhouses. Who's the builder? Is it Brunson Builders? Number 17. You have that information?
Your question is who's the developer?
Yes. Is it Brunson Townhouse? The only name I see here is, who is the builder?
Is the applicant for ordinance number 17 here, please? Are you the applicant? Come forward, please.
Yeah, I saw it.
And if you would introduce yourself.
I am Terrence Bronson.
Come on, talk in the microphone.
I'm Terrence Bronson.
And what's your name of your company?
TNL Brisk LLC.
Where are you located?
I'm located in 49 Mountain Vista Drive, Alexander, Arkansas, 72002.
Okay, chat with me after. Thank you.
Okay, we've had the three readings of the ordinances. All in favor of the passage of the ordinances indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. I've had a request to recognize a representative from Verizon, who I believe is here in the audience. As you know, we have discussed and deferred quite some number of times the ordinance on our agenda, ordinance number 18, and I know we've just passed this, and I think they wanted to make a comment or two. April, welcome.
Very briefly, sir. Mayor Stodola, City Manager Moore, members of the board, Mr. Carpenter, thank you so much for this opportunity to make a significant infrastructure investment in your city. As you know, we at Verizon, we take pride in saying that we don't wait for the future, we build it. So we are really excited to partner with your city and really excited about all of the great things and technological advances that will be available to you based off of this infrastructure. So thank you for your cooperation and for working with us.
Well, April, I want to appreciate your patience and perseverance as we work through this matter, and I'm looking forward to all of the various smart city technological advancements that you've talked about that can be made available to us that will all be to the benefit of our citizens. It will truly continue to make Little Rock one of the real leaders in the South in terms of smart city applications.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Director Campuris is first, and then Director Hendricks.
Well, thank you for coming, but I'd also like to say to Bruce and Tom, thank you for getting together and getting this thing done. We talked for an hour about our lack of knowledge, and we're now past it without a comment, and so thank y'all for what you did.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
What's your title?
My name is April Brumfield. I'm a Director of Government Affairs for Verizon.
Right. The reason why I asked you, I did talk with a young lady that was here at the conference.
Was it Colette? Are you talking to
Colette?
someone
Yeah.
from Verizon?
Colette. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, she talked to me, and she was really interesting. It's good meeting you.
It's
I'll
very
chat
nice
with
to
you
meet
later.
Very nice to meet you.
Okay.
Thank you both very much. Director Wright.
When will we know when Verizon is ready to roll out these opportunities that I keep hearing about?
In terms of the smart city solutions? So those solutions will be available once the infrastructure is in place. So that's wireless and wireline facilities that have to be deployed throughout the city. It's a multi-year build project. So probably there's a certain point throughout the bill where those advances may be available in some parts of the city, but not the entire city until the completion of the project, because there are parts of the city that won't have the infrastructure in terms of fiber optic cable, small cell nodes available to support smart city applications.
Okay.
So I would say the completion, we are looking towards a 3-year build.
Okay. I understand that. Stick a pin in it. Now, Mayor, Mr. Moore, will this require cutting up our streets?
That's correct. In cutting them up is maybe not exactly the vernacular.
Well, that's what happens.
But there is a street cut provision, and I know they're going to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. But we've had specific conversations with not only Verizon but other carriers about street cuts and about the requirement to fix the streets according to our specifications.
And I'm bringing that up because I want to make sure that that's reiterated and reiterated and reiterated, because I don't want us to be putting in some of these streets are over $1 million to construct. And then as soon as we get it constructed, here comes the company, cuts into it, puts a patch, the patch fails 6 months to a year later, and then we have to go back and fix it. Some constituents are mad, and I just want to make sure that we are very clear as to the standard that this has to be to. I want all the smart city technology that you have available, but I also want to be driving on smooth roads too.
That's certainly understandable, Director Wright, and
Okay.
I assure you that I've just honestly had a conversation earlier this evening with Assistant City Manager James Jones about being really diligent and deliberate about coordinating our efforts and understanding when there are upcoming development projects, when there are upcoming opportunities where we can coordinate either with other developers or with the city when they're going into the streets or going into the ground.
Thank you so much.
That's we're going to make our best effort to do that. And Mr. Moore and Mayor Stodola and Mr. Jones all have my contact information, and I'm happy to be available to you if you have
Thank
questions from your constituents.
Well, I just, as long as we're following the policy that we put in place, I know Mr. Moore, he has heard this before, and you see the mayor jump right on it, so he knew where I was going. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will tell you that because of the new language in the ordinance, we're going to be able to at least now engage in specific conversations about the type of smart city applications that we will want in lieu of the 4-pair dark fiber. So I think while we may not have it complete for 36 months, I do think we're going to be able to let the citizens know the type of smart city applications that we're wanting to put into the city.
Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to the reading of ordinance number 13, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Palmer, short form PDR, located at 2919 to 2921 Lee Street and 1312 Kavanaugh Boulevard, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Palmer, short form PDR, located at 2919 to 2921 Lee Street and 1312 Kavanaugh Boulevard. Second reading.
Move we suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Palmer, short form PDR, located at 2919 to 2921 Lee Street and 1312 Kavanaugh Boulevard. Third and final reading.
Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just have a couple of questions about this. And Bruce, shall I ask you the questions? On behalf of the Hillcrest Residents Association, I spoke to the president this morning, and he was not able to come tonight, but they voted unanimously to oppose this but he also said that it was his understanding that the request had been changed since it was initially presented, and I wanted to get clarification on that. I mean, it looks from reading everything that it was, so then that would bring up another question if in fact it were.
Sure. Let me ask Dana Carney to come forward.
Good evening. Vice Mayor, you are correct. The application was revised through the Planning Commission process. The application as it was originally filed would have been to split the property into two lots, with the duplex on the north half being on one lot, and then the studio apartment on the bottom part of it, the southern part, being on a second lot. We did not support that as planning staff. We felt that the creation of the studio apartment lot created a lot that was so substandard, we just could not support that. So the applicant did amend the application to eliminate the request to create the two lots. But since the property was already zoned PDR, and she wanted to add a second floor onto the studio apartment and a small, I think 4-foot by 16-foot addition onto the building, we went forward with the staff recommendation of that amended application, and that's what the Planning Commission approved.
Okay. Is there a point at which the neighborhood would be notified that changes were going to be made after the neighborhood receives the initial information?
Well, the issue of adding the second floor onto the structure was constant throughout the process, and of adding the addition. It was at the Planning Commission meeting that the applicant actually reduced the size of the addition. Now, we did have the applicant amend her application to drop the proposed lot split prior to the Planning Commission meeting. I do not know that notice went to the neighborhood association of that. It happened mid-process, and so I do not know for certain if they received word, other than perhaps verbally or in contact with staff, that there was a change.
Okay. And I think they received it after the fact, and so while this morning they were on record as being against it, Eric told me that with these changes, they're really not sure.
Thank you.
They are not. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Richardson, do you have a question or comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Dana, thank you. One quick point of clarification. I think I talked about this last week with the big disconnect between Planning Commission recommendation and staff's recommendation. This it's reading that staff's recommend approval. That's not correct, is it? And that's based on the amended one?
Yes, sir. We were recommending denial of the application as originally submitted.
Right.
But by the time this went to the Planning Commission, she had amended her application, and we were recommending approval. I think you may be thinking of
There's another one on our agenda.
coming up.
That was 19. I think that was the one, and that kind of helps reconcile the differences between that huge gap. So that's what it was, 19.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Dana.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carney. Okay, we've had the three readings of the ordinances. No more questions. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinance is approved. We can now move on to the additional separate items on our agenda, and let me ask for the first reading of ordinance number 19.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Gramercy Park, Midtown short form PDR, located at 6400 West Markham Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Gramercy Park at Midtown short form PDR, located at 6400 West Markham Street. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, saying nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zone development, establish a planned residential district titled Gramercy Park at Midtown, short form PDR, located at 6400 West Markham Street, third and final reading.
Okay, is the applicant present? Yes. Your name, please, sir?
Good evening. My name is Rodney Chandler.
Okay, Mr. Chandler, I have your card here. Please, go ahead.
What I'd like to do is to defer to any comments from any opposers that are here tonight. We've had several meetings with the neighborhood residents. We've been very detailed and very precise in our comments, but I'm happy to address any questions that this board may have at this time as well.
I don't see that any board members have any questions, Mr. Chandler, of you now. Certainly, whether you have any opening statements to give about this or not, I'll certainly give you a chance to respond to any of the applicants or any of the people who choose to speak against this matter.
Certainly. Gramercy Park is a urban concept. The city of Little Rock, increasingly in the Midtown area, has developed a need for upscale patio homes. With the creation of the district in Midtown, housing of this nature currently does not exist. We propose to create patio homes for sale that will meet the demand. We have done research, spec and field projects in Little Rock. Sometimes we get them, they're not the best fit. This is one that is quality, it is upscale, and it targets a specific market. In addition to that, this property has mature trees. We're targeting to save 80% of the trees on this corner location. The other thing is that this project brings increased revenue from a tax base, approximately, $15,000 per year. The other thing is that we recognize that there's hospitals in proximity location that have doctors that need a place to stay, to have access to the hospital. What I want to do right now, if I could, is bring up the team, if I can, to give you some additional comments.
What are their names, please?
That's Shelley Stein with Caldwell Banker.
Yeah, I've got their cards. I'll call on them.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you'll just have a seat, please. Okay. All right, Shelley, you're next, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. This is an opportunity to take the district at Midtown and bring it on up to create a really amazing concept. You know, I'm in real estate. I have people call me all the time looking for opportunities to buy. And we've found that there is a real need in the Midtown community for some nice luxury patio homes or nice luxury homes, and without paying the Heights prices, without paying those, you know, exorbitant rates that they just aren't able to do. But these are going to be very, very high quality. I have personally sold Mr. Chandler's personal homes. He goes in and develops wonderful opportunities for our community. He's established in the marketplace, and I hope you guys see that this is a vote favorably for this development.
Very good. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
The next card I have is from Scott Moody.
Thank you for the consideration to rezone of our property. Perry Doubleday, our realtor, handed out a packet to everyone earlier. In it, there are some letters for some people that are for our proposal that could not be here. And also, there's a study from the Arkansas Economic Development Institute showing the financial impact that a development of this type would have on this property. In it, you can see that the, like Rodney said, the tax revenue for the city was substantially increased, as well as the property values of the homes in the surrounding area. So it's a win-win for everyone. In my opinion, the city will do one of two things. It'll either stagnate or it'll grow. When we built our house on this lot in 1953, we were outside of the city limits, if you can imagine that. Markham was a newly paved two-lane road that ended where 430 now intersects with it. Beyond that, it was a dirt road. McKinley was also a dirt road. I'd say the city has done a pretty good job in growing and expanding and moving forward. Without this type of growth, the people in Briarwood, which you will hear from later, will not be living in the houses they're living in now. And they will bring up the opposition of increased traffic. Briarwood is 2 blocks west of our property. So a few extra cars on the road 2 blocks up from them is not going to matter much. A little over 20 years ago, nobody wanted to go downtown after work. And now look at the River Market area. The same as what we're talking about now is now called Midtown. In the last few years, it has really redeveloped and revitalized itself. New shops, new dining areas, new apartments, not to mention UAMS, St. Vincent's, and now a development is going in the old Sears building. Progress is something that we should embrace, not to fear. Several months ago, I drove down Markham from our property west and was basically appalled at the shape, the condition of the homes and the yards on both sides of the street, including our own. The first thing I thought was, this area is run down. It wasn't like it was before. This proposal is exactly what that corner needs. Last month, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve our proposal. When the vote was taken and all 10 hands were raised in approval, I thought to myself, these commissioners had been up there for a long time. They've seen a lot of proposals come and go, and they're tired of people coming down and speaking against every proposal that comes down the pike. We were the first ones to build out in that area in 1953. And let us be the first ones to start the revitalization of that area to bring it back to where it once was. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next card I have is from Perry Doubleday.
Hello, I'm Perry Doubleday with Coldwell Banker. I'm the one that Scott mentioned. We have, I must tell you how patient these 4 brothers that own this property have been with me. They have had this house on the market for over 3 years. I have had it listed for 2.5 of those years, working with open houses, calling, trying to make people come take a look at this house that has been sitting there. One thing that Scott did not tell you is it is actually 2 houses. When the family grew to 6, Dad went in and built another house and attached it to the Redwood house so that they would have enough room for all of those 4 boys. You know, and so it is 2 houses, 2 kitchens, the whole bit sitting on this property. Mr. Moody built that house for his wife who wanted to go back to California. That's the reason it's a Redwood house, and it kept her here. Through the time, they were not notified when Park Plaza was going to be built. It was an open pasture when the boys were growing up there. And as Scott said, Plaza West was a horse farm. They lost lots of the land in regard to McKinley being paved, Markham being widened, that kind of thing. Some of the land has also got single-family houses on it. You're going to hear from Mrs. Pollard's son, who called me on August 8th, the day before the zoning meeting. And we discussed everyone that has made offers on this property. All have been commercial until the vision of Mr. Chandler. I mean, we've gotten offers from hamburger joints, donut shops. We got an offer from an insurance agency that wanted to live in one of the houses and use the other as its office. When I told Mrs. Pollard that, she said she would go for that because traffic during the day, it wouldn't bother her, that kind of thing. And she's the one that's been opposed seriously to this and wanting it to stay a single-family area. But, you know, having said that, they wanted to take the house off the market until they could get it rezoned to commercial. We couldn't do that because if that one buyer, that one residential buyer came to buy that house, it would have been off the market. We haven't had that one residential buyer come, I'm afraid. So we met with AEDI to find out what was going on. The first thing out of their mouth was the most beneficial thing for the corner, that corner for the city is going to be commercial. They don't want it to go commercial. They want it to stay residential. They know the people around in that area. They grew up in the area. They don't want a neon sign on that corner, and so to have these luxury patio homes on that corner would be greatly beneficial for the area. You know, what you're looking at, I'm the one that put the packet out. You've got the location of where it is. You've got two of the areas that were patio homes that Mr. Chandler built within the city. AEDI decided to use part of that for what they came up with in regard to the increased revenue the city would get. You've got some of these surveys that state that you have several people in that area that want it to go in order to stay residential. You have the district at Midtown that is a beautiful, beautiful place, going to have white napkin restaurants, and then you've got Target with the mixed apartments and retail there. So when you have people coming from this, driving up McKinley, I think the better thing for them to see at that corner is going to be, this property. And Mr. Chandler wants to cut off the Markham entrance totally, only come in on McKinley, so that will take everything off of Markham, put a privacy fence around it, and do a one-way in, one-way out, which he's already positioned to the zoning committee. So with that, you know, these brothers have worked for 3 years to sell their property, and the only thing that we've gotten is commercial. And I do believe that they have the right to move on with their lives and sell this property. And I do think for the progress of Midtown, this is a beautiful way to do it. It's going to give an opportunity in that area. You've got the bike lanes in the district of Midtown that plan to connect in the city of Little Rock to all of the bike traffic here, and it can continue through the neighborhoods at that point. So I thank you again for your time and consideration, and I do hope that you will recommend this change.
Thank you, Ms. Doubleday. Okay, we have some cards that wish to speak against this matter. Neil Pollard, you're recognized, please.
Yes, I'm against it. We bought in that area because it's supposed to be single-family dwellings and everything. Yes, he said that they're making these little homes for individual people. I think they run over $100,000 and some odd $1,000, you know, to buy. Ain't nobody going to buy a house where you've got 6 houses in this little small piece of property. He talks about the hospitals. I worked for the hospitals. Doctors are not going to go there. They're going to go to West Little Rock and buy $300,000 or $400,000 homes. Interns, they cannot afford to buy the house, so therefore these houses, 6 houses on this one piece of property that y'all zoning people said that was too many for that area. Now, I'd go for, you know, maybe 4 apartments or whatever, but these will be apartments before it's all over with, because if you look at how close these things are going to be in there, they're so packed in that it's going to cause a headache. And you talking about trash problems, you're going to have 6 people, 6 apartments, so therefore you're going to have 12 trash containers, 6 recycle, 6 trash out on the curb, because they're not going to have a dumpster. They're going to have, and so the truck's going to have to come down. They're going to block that. Yes, McKinley is a very, very busy street. They use it for Park Plaza to get out. Catholic High uses it to come out of and everything. I'm not against the growth. I understand that growth is going to be part of Little Rock. But, when you all disagree with your own zoning committee and say that, yeah, it's all right to put 6 houses in this one little piece of property on this corner, why do we even have them if you're not going to listen to them? That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Ruth Bell? You want me to call you later? I'm sorry, you're
I'm
up.
revising it all I can. As you know, I'm Ruth Bell, and I'm still with the League of Women Voters, and I obviously haven't been talking enough. There are many reasons to oppose this application. Our reason has to do with zoning issues. I do want Mr. Moody to know that I too go back to 1951 and can remember when that was outside the city limits, and I even can remember when Mississippi was a dirt road. So, yes, lots of things have changed in Little Rock since that time. However, back to zoning issues. We are in opposition to this because of the density and because the change zoning will allow more intense use to intrude into a well-established and viable neighborhood. And I'm rather surprised to hear someone in support characterize the area, residential area abutting that lot, as being run down, because my friends who live there would be hugely shocked to know they lived in a rundown neighborhood. They keep telling me it's a better neighborhood than my neighborhood. We are in opposition because the change zoning would allow more intense use to intrude into this great neighborhood. Zoning changes in developed areas are usually driven by changes in the area that have occurred over a long period of time. The single-family zoning designation west of Mississippi has served the area well for more than 50 years. The commercial classifications east of McKinley I said Mississippi, sorry. The zoning classifications east of McKinley have been in place for about the same length of time, and we all know how well that commercial area is doing. In the commercial areas north and south of Markham and east of Mississippi to University, there are at least 4 structures that provide more intense uses, apartments or other uses that are equivalent to apartments, so that those needs are already available in the area. Tell you our real greatest concern is over the years that we've watched planning and zoning here at the city, we have repeatedly seen a pattern where an inappropriate use is approved for an area, and then that approved project is used to justify additional inappropriate projects in the same general location. We're afraid that approval of this application would be like the nose of the camel under the tent, leading to additional requests for inappropriate uses along Markham. And we feel that turning down this application would support the city's long-range planning and zoning and help keep Markham one-family residential as it is now to Mississippi, where there is a church, and then on to Brady School, which has an apartment complex across from it. It's just not an appropriate use. And we're afraid it will lead to further, more dense applications in the future that you will have a harder time turning down. And I have to be somewhat tacky and say that, yes, it's too bad that the house couldn't be sold as for a residence, but it's my observation that if it doesn't sell, you keep lowering the price till it does. Thank you. Please vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Alan Clack, you're recognized, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Clark, and I live in Plaza Heights neighborhood. We're just on the west side of this property. I lived there for 28 years. And after discussing with our neighbors, we understand the progress is very important to the city. And we've seen a lot of nice progress in downtown area, midtown, and it's beautiful. But we strongly believe that the new addition, rezoning to this property to 6 units, and try to see from Markham Street right now, it's front of the house. When this is going to be new property, what you're going to see, it's wooden fence. So nobody will know if it's a trailer park behind or it's this very nice development. So if we really care for the city, how it's going to look like, the image, it's very important. Another issue is safety. Right now, it's supposed to be weight of way inside the property and out. It's going to be 15, 17 cars coming in and out against the traffic. And as you know, a lot of people break the law. When they want to really turn into this property, they're going to break it. We got a lot of people coming to Park Plaza. We got kids coming to couple high schools. And for that reason, we strongly oppose this redevelopment for the safety of the children in development of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clack. My next card is from Mary Julia Hill.
Good evening. I'm Mary Julia Hill. I'm the president of the Briarwood Area Neighborhood Association. The Briarwood Area Neighborhood Association encompasses 7 subdivisions, one of which is Plaza Terrace, which is directly across the street from this property. We go from University Avenue all the way to Cunningham Lake Road, which is almost to John Barrow, and from I-630 to West Markham Street. I'd like to read a letter that all 4 neighborhood association presidents that surround this property and I collaborated on. But before that, I'd like to quickly mention 2 things. 1, the development documentation states that these homes will be for sale and possibly rental. I believe they are destined to immediately become rental property because a little over a year ago, Icon Homes built 2 homes a few blocks west of this proposed project, just off Markham Street in Fair Hills, which is in my neighborhood, near Markham and Mississippi. They were unable to sell those homes for the asking price, and they immediately became rental property, which is what I see happening here as well. As someone who has relied on rental property before retiring because of frequent moves throughout the United States and overseas, I believe in the value of available, well-maintained rental property. What I don't think is that we need more of it in this area now. Within less than half a mile of the proposed project, and I'm only talking about the area south, which falls in the Banna area, so we're talking between South Hughes Street and University Avenue, we have 4 apartment complexes, one with 52 units, a high-rise with 133 units, an apartment and townhouse complex with 156 units, the new luxury high-end Park Avenue lofts, 258 units, 35 single-family homes, 24 duplexes, and 7 quadruplexes, all of which currently have multiple vacancies because I've contacted them all in the last 48 hours. The other thing I would like to respond to is Ms. Shelley Stein with Caldwell Banker spoke at the Planning and Development meeting, and there are two things that I would like to address. One, Ms. Stein said that there is currently nothing like this project currently in the area. That's not completely accurate. We do have duplexes, townhouses, and beautifully renovated single-family homes with high-end luxury fixtures, energy-saving appliances, and sophisticated technology, such as smart home cameras, thermostats, and smoke CO2 detectors. I strongly feel that renovating existing homes with high-end luxury features would be a far better choice for the neighborhood and community than replacing those homes with cramped, crowded, high-density developments. But Ms. Stein is correct in saying that we don't currently have anything in the area that looks like the proposed Gramercy Park. The homes, retail areas such as Park Plaza Mall, Park Avenue Shopping Center, the Container Store, along with the beautiful new Sears area redevelopment, have modern and mid-century modern architecture. This project is not at all in keeping with the cohesive and consistent look currently in the area. And lastly, she also stated that this project is, and I quote, an opportunity for you to have upscale people as neighbors. Well, I need you to know that I, for one, am perfectly happy with the quality and caliber of the neighbors I currently have. On to the letter. This is the letter that we collaborated on. Dear Little Rock Board of Directors, I am asking you to oppose the zoning variance requested by Icon Homes for the development of 6400 West Markham. Icon Homes has asked for a zoning variance at 6400 West Markham, corner of West Markham Street and North McKinley Street, across from Park Plaza Mall, to replace the one single-family home with 3 duplexes, 6 units. They claim that these 1,250 to 1,500 square foot upscale residential properties will be sold for approximately $263,000 each. I was shocked when the City Planning and Development Committee voted to approve the variance, although the city staff had recommended against it. I've been told that they were looking at the project from a business perspective. I feel strongly that unless we want Little Rock to be further devoid of population, we need to look at developments in established neighborhoods from the neighbors and neighborhoods perspective. The neighborhood I represent, Briarwood Area Neighborhood Association, and all of the other 3 surrounding neighborhoods concur with this letter and strongly oppose this development. The Hall High Neighborhood Association, President Bill Jones, Plaza Heights Neighborhood Association, President Alan Clack, who you just heard from, and the University Park Neighborhood Association, President Pam Powell. To see this from our perspective, I think you need only ask yourself the following questions. 1, do you want the single-family home next door to you torn down and replaced by 3 duplexes, 6 townhomes? Would you buy a home next door to 3 duplexes? Would you pay over $250,000 to live in a 1,250 to 1,500 square foot home on the corner of West Markham Street and North McKinley? Do you want increased traffic on the corner of West Markham and North McKinley? And what would you do if this development was approved for the property adjacent to you now? I think your answer to number 5 would be the same as most people. You would want to move if you could afford to do so. And that's one of the reasons we see more and more vacant homes in the city of Little Rock. Although city representatives are always saying how important community and neighborhoods are to the well-being of the city, we aren't doing all that we can to support our established neighborhoods. Projects like this, which financially benefit the few, seller, builder, realtor, banker, in the short term, negatively impact not just the neighbors and neighborhoods, but the city as well in the long term. More than half of the entire population of Little Rock already lives in only one of the 3 Little Rock Police Department patrol divisions. That division, which continues to grow, is located the furthest from the city center. We need to look at this project not as a single isolated event, but consider the lasting repercussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hill. The next card I have is, do you have questions for the applicant? I've got 2 other cards. All right, Vice Mayor Webb has a question for Ms. Hill. If you'd come back to the podium, please. Sorry.
Thank you. And I have a couple of questions for you. You mentioned that they said that the houses were going to be sold for $260-something thousand, I think. But before that, you had said that there were some houses that were built in a little bit further west in Briarwood just recently that were going to be these luxury homes, and then they were almost immediately turned into rentals. Is that, I want to verify if that is correct.
Yes, they are still, those homes are still owned by Icon Homes, and they're rental property.
Okay. And you said that you called the apartments, including the ones, the new ones, I can't remember, the lofts, I
They're
think.
called Park Avenue Lofts, yes, and they have several vacancies. In all, they have different size apartments and stuff. Yes, I called them all, or I checked the website, and you can drive through the neighborhood and see the single-family homes, duplexes, and quadruplexes, because they have signs out front.
Okay. And the four neighborhood associations that you referred to, those are all of the neighborhood associations in that area. Is that correct?
Yes, 6400 West Markham is not a member of a neighborhood association, but we represent all of the neighborhood associations around that area.
So that's University Park, Briarwood, Plaza Heights, and Hall High Neighborhood Association.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Do you have any of the neighborhood associations south of Markham Street there?
That's, I am.
You are? Okay.
And
I'm south. So there's
Right,
two.
you're in the Briarwood.
There's two north, and then there's two
Two south,
south. Briarwood and University Park are south. And Plaza Heights and Hall High are north.
Very good. Thank you.
Everywhere but there.
Okay, Victoria Vila?
Good evening. My name is Victoria Villa, and I live off Mississippi, and I live in the Banner Briarwood neighborhood. I'm speaking for myself, as well as the future generation of residents that will be there. I don't have the luxury of having 54 years in this neighborhood, but I do have the luxury of choosing to be in this neighborhood. I can go where I want to go, and I have chosen to make this my home. And I've chosen to rear my family there, have a career here, and I want to stay here. I'm for progress and growth. I'm from a big city. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I see it all the time. But I'm not for this property. 6 small units on one area is just too many. We talk about increased traffic, and there will be. That intersection is horrendous as it is. If you continue to add more residents to that area, it's going to get worse. When you're coming out of the Target parking lot and up on that hill, it's a blind spot as is. Adding more traffic, more cars, it's just going to get worse. There are many places to rent, and Mary Julia has already discussed those, so I won't go into that. The owner says that the city will either become stagnant or grow, but life is not black and white like that. There are many shades of gray, and in this situation, there are different options that we have. At the beginning of this meeting, we all prayed. You asked for guidance, and you said that you don't take this job lightly. And I'm asking you to heed the words of the neighborhood. You represent us. Please listen to the residents that live there day in and day out, that drive those streets every single day. If we want Banna, the Briarwood neighborhood, to continue to be a jewel in the crown that is known as Little Rock, you will vote against this. You as a committee will heed this, and you will listen. Again, you represent us, and that's why you're here. And we please want you to hear our words. And there are many people that have not been here. There are many people that are for or against this. But we are here, and we are voicing our opinion, and we're voicing how this impacts us, how it's going to impact the next generation that comes through, the next generation that I have. the residents that are there. And again, I'm against this zoning variance, and I hope that you will heed these words. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Villa. Bill Jones, you're next, please.
Mayor Stodola, Vice Mayor Webb, members of the City Board, citizens. My name is Bill Jones. I am currently president of the Hall High Neighborhood Association. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. The Hall High Neighborhood Association Board has voiced its opposition to this proposed development. Individual members of the organization who have contacted me have also expressed their objections to the project. I had written out a script, but in light of comments from both the proponents and the opponents, I would like to modify it, so please forgive me if I stumble over my words, which are not now scripted. I am one of those who has a long history in that neighborhood. My parents built the second house on McAdoo Street in 1960. The house next to us dates from 1954. When we moved there, everything else was forest around us. A wonderful place to play. It quickly developed within months. We soon had a next door neighbor on the other side, and houses began moving down the street. The reason I bring this up is that I want to address a certain literalism that I detected in the concept of this property at the corner of McKinley and Markham, and the irrelevance of properties down the street that would not be affected supposedly by traffic. I was 16 years old in 1966 when I learned to drive. I have been making left turns, right turns, and driving across Markham to get to a shortcut to UALR. Through Briarwood. And I can tell you, as someone who does that, and my wife, who is a professor at UALR, could add her voice, that there's a lot of traffic between McKinley and Markham and McAdoo and its intersection with Markham Street. And this very day, I was speaking to my next door neighbor, who is a member of the association and who was aware I was coming tonight. And she said, be sure to mention Chick-fil-A. That too is not directly across the street, but there have been accidents there. It is a hazard at almost all times. I have been attempting to come from downtown on Markham and found myself in the traffic tie-up in that area and have watched cars moving in and out of that place of business. If there is no access to or egress from this proposed development on Markham itself, it's still going to come out on Markham. I don't think people who are trying to get somewhere by way of Markham are going to then go north on McKinley and turn right at Catholic High and then turn right to go wherever they want to go, or left. That street is busy enough as it is. And this proposal would, as has been pointed out, replace a single-family dwelling with a triple duplex, 6-unit, multi-family plan consisting of either 1,250 or 1,500 square foot structures, priced above $200,000. This will necessarily affect the character of the neighborhood, whether the units are sold as projected or perhaps ultimately rented. And I know that this has been anticipated, and I've alluded to it with Chick-fil-A, but the development will have a significant impact on traffic in an area already affected by Park Plaza, Catholic High School, Plaza West, and Markham Street. So I would urge you to consider the words of those of us who live in that area, and I do consider that as one who walked on Saturdays to go to Moses Melody Shop in Park Plaza in the mid-'60s. That is part of my neighborhood as well. And I trust that you will consider those appeals from the people in our broader community. Thank you very much.
And thank you, sir. Okay, that concludes the cars. Mr. Chandler, I'll give you an opportunity to address any issues that were brought up by those people speaking against it. Briefly, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think that we've heard a lot of passionate comments on both sides this evening. And obviously, there's a disagreement of both opportunities. What I do want to say is that I'm going to go back to the Fair Hills location. Those two houses on the market, I think, for 6 to 8 months. They currently are lease homes. They lease for $1,350 per month each. And as a matter of fact, in number 7 of Fair Hills is a husband and a wife. And they both work at UMS. And they're doctors. And they said that they wanted to live in that area because it was convenient to their employment. And they signed a 3-year contract. So there is a need for this. And there are individuals that desire this kind of living. The next thing is that, quick history, I built 3 homes 3 years ago at 5806, 5812, C Street, and one on the corner of 400 North Pierce Street. The home at 400 North Pierce Street just sold a year ago for $300,000. It was 1,550 square feet. That alone demonstrates there's demand, there's capacity, and the city of Little Rock is wanting this type of living. The next thing is that these are not duplexes, they're not townhomes. These are upscale patio homes. The difference is they have garages. When you look at the previous location of University Mall, it was torn down. You see what exists today. That's called urban development. In major cities, it was alluded to in Dallas. I was in Frisco, Texas yesterday and went through Dallas. This is what's happening in other cities. The difference is it's a new concept to Little Rock. We talk about praying by Director Wright. I'm a man of faith, and I believe in praying. We talk about wisdom. Sometimes when change is taking place, it can be fearful. The reason why the City Planning Commission voted 10-0 to approve this project is because they recognize change was needed. And I get it. Change does require courage. If this city is going to be progressive, we have to sometimes move beyond our comfort zone. I thank you for your time this evening, and I appreciate your support of this application. Thank you.
Mr. Chandler, before you sit down, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
In looking at this diagram, how are these patio homes supposed to be laid out? It looks like, based on this, it looks like they're connected. Is that the case?
That is correct. They are connected, and there's 3 separate buildings. The one you're looking at is on the north side of the property. That's 2 homes.
Is that lots 5 or 6 or both?
I don't know if the city has okay, there you go right there. That would be lot 5 and 6, which is at the north. And then the homes to the south, lot 4 and 3, that's 2 homes. There's a 16-foot separation between lots 2 and 3, and that's 2 more homes. And Mayor, we created the design to face each other. There is a 25-foot setback on West Markham as well as on McKinley. At the Planning Commission level,
That's basically the back door of those 4 houses?
That is
Faces
correct.
Markham?
That is correct. And there is a privacy fence that we agreed to put in to enclose the entire development. We also heard at the Planning Commission level that was concerned about the turns. So we said right hand in, right hand out. We're going to do a curve, raise it up, so no one could turn from McKinley into the development. The idea that we brought to the table was to be cohesive. Is there a better idea? The City Planning Commission turned down 3 commercial projects.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, they did. I understand that. But it sounds like, the neighborhood is concerned about the density, about trying to cram 6 different homes onto this piece of property. How do you respond to that? Why can't you do less than that if you wanted to develop these nice patio
Sure.
homes?
I mean, that's a great question. Obviously, there's an investment cost to acquire the land. There's a cost to build the infrastructure and improvements. When you take those costs and you factor them all together, anything less than 6 is just not feasible. When you look at West Little Rock, where you have Taylor Park, you look at Lamarche Gardens on Lamarche Boulevard, Madison Park, those are all attached developments. There's always an acquisition cost, there's an infrastructure cost, and those numbers just don't work. And that's why we chose 6.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have some board members that wish to make comments or ask questions. Director Fortson, you're first, please.
I have a question for staff.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Carney.
Mr. Carney, as I recall from the staff write-up, these 6 units are located on slightly less than 1/2 acre.
That's correct.
And staff is recommending denial of the application based on that density.
Not just solely on that, Director Fortson, that certainly does come into play. 6 units on less than a 1/2 acre, you're looking at a density number of 12, be comparable to a multifamily MF12 density. So certainly the numbers themselves do come into play, but not just solely that. When we talk about the density of a project, it's not simply a function of numbers. If you look at the site plan in front of you, you have to also question the livability of the development. Is it too dense simply because of numbers? I don't know. But it's certainly too dense when you begin to look at how the project is proposed to be developed. It's virtually nothing but brick and asphalt. Very little livability to it. As staff looks at it, there's very little green space for the tenants or residents that might be living on the site. So certainly that does come into play as well. As Mr. Collins talked about last week, another issue that we have to consider is the impact of that density of development on the street. As the project is proposed, access to the site is off of McKinley, and it's right in, right out only. So people that live or visit the site can only access the site coming southbound on McKinley. In our opinion, that's going to potentially force the traffic from this development through the residential neighborhood adjacent to the west. You'll have to come up Plaza Drive, circle around, come out by Catholic High, and come southbound on McKinley to get into this project. If you leave the site, then you have to make a right turn coming out. The question is, how functional is that going to be at the times that McKinley is stacked up? And I know every one of us has sat on McKinley coming out of Park Plaza or leaving Catholic High. And what potential impact is there going to be on McKinley and on the intersection? All of those elements combined together, in staff's opinion, are just not appropriate for this site.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. You've answered my second, third, and fourth questions at the same time.
I can stand up and guess some more if you'd like.
Dana, don't go away. There's probably other members that want to
Yes,
ask
sir.
you questions. Vice Mayor Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you answered all the questions that I had for you as well, and you did it very articulately, so thank you very much for that. I just want to make a comment. I don't really have a question. This morning, when I pulled out of my driveway, I felt pretty good about my neighborhood. I felt pretty good about the way it looked, and I felt pretty good about my neighbors. But I understand now that maybe my feeling that way was misplaced. But it's a great neighborhood, and I grew up in that neighborhood. And when I came back to Little Rock, that was where I chose to live. So in full disclosure, I live a block from there. But I can no longer turn left on Markham in the morning, and I come out McKinley every morning when I come to work because of the traffic when I try to get out there on Markham. You know, I like progress and I like change, and I certainly appreciate the desire to sell the property that you've had in your family for a long time. But I just have concerns. 4 neighborhood associations oppose this, and I think that staff is right, and that this is just not the ideal project for this site. So thank you, Dana.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
My question, maybe it's for Dana or maybe for the applicant, but are all patio homes attached, or can they be separate, standalone units?
Director Wright, I think the term is used for both.
Okay.
Attached developments or for smaller lots, small lot development. Instead of having large single-family lots, you might have a 50-foot wide smaller lot with just a patio space for a yard. I've seen the term applied both to those that are attached. Our term of art in the code is a zero lot line very often. When that people think of patio homes where you have a very small yard, but it has been applied to both.
Well, I'm very progressive when it comes down to development, and especially with the different housing styles across the country. I try to stay abreast of that. I have a construction background, but to me, this looks like a duplex, and I'm trying to visualize it, and I'm having a lot of trouble visualizing it. I understand now what I'm seeing based upon what the explanation has been. This seems very tight. It just seems very crammed. But the applicant has explained that, you know, due to acquisition cost and development cost, that anything less than 6 would not be feasible for him. But it just doesn't look livable to me. Okay, but you answered my question. I was wondering if patio homes could be applied to this because they're connected. They just look like a duplex. Thank you.
Director Compures, you're recognized, please.
Dana, a couple of questions. This is very reminiscent of something we've looked at in the past at Highway 10 and University, where Jeff Sharp House they wanted to make into, and then that lady's house on the southwest corner that she wanted to rezone. It looks like to me that it's a traffic nightmare, and if I lived in here, wanted to get in here, and I was going north on McKinley, I don't care what that median said, I would try to go around it rather than go all the way up and turn back around. Secondly, let's just say that whoever lives in lot number 6 has 3 couples over for dinner. Where are they going to park?
Director Compures, I think that's a question best answered by the applicant. You certainly could not park on McKinley. You do have large parking lot across McKinley that might be utilized.
Well, I agree with y'all that this is an invitation to a traffic nightmare. And I know that this right in, right out is the way they're trying to solve this, but people will not do that for any length of time. And if there's any more than 2 people or 2 cars per resident, I have no idea where they're going to park. And whoever said that as you're going up McKinley north, there is a crest of that hill and you're coming down through there. it's going to be a real nightmare. So I will not be able to support this.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. What is the width of that street? Is it 20 feet?
Of McKinley Street?
No, Mercy Park
Oh,
Drive.
it's 20-foot wide.
20-foot wide?
Driveway, private drive.
Oh, it's a private drive?
Yes.
Okay, so if we had a medical emergency or a fire truck that needed to come up in here, would they be able to come up in there and help people?
Well, 20-foot of pavement is the minimum that the fire department would need, assuming there were no cars.
Assuming no one was parked in the street?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, well, I was looking for the fire department report, and I didn't see anything other than to contact Tony Rhodes for additional information. So I was curious to know what their comments were about this.
If they were asked to comment on that matter directly, they would simply state that they needed the 20-foot of pavement for access.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor. Call the question.
There's a motion and a second to call the question. Discussion on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. That requires that we move immediately to a vote. All in favor of the passage of ordinance number 19 indicate by saying aye. All opposed say nay. I'm sorry that your, Mr. Chandler, your ordinance has failed.
Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to the reading of ordinance number 21.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled The Plaza Revised Longform PCD, located on the southwest corner of 65th Street and Scott Hamilton Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled The Plaza Revised Longform PCD, located on the southwest corner of 65th Street and Scott Hamilton Drive. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled The Plaza Revised Longform PCD, located on the southwest corner of 65th Street and Scott Hamilton Drive. Third and final reading.
All right, we've had the three readings of the ordinance. All in favor of the passage of ordinance number 21 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The ordinance is passed. And I believe that concludes our agenda.
Mayor, I have a request.
Okay, go right ahead.
Mr. Carpenter, Mayor, I'm requesting Mr. Carpenter develop a resolution allowing the city to participate in the National League of Cities Discount Prescription Drug program and bring it back to us within 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And let us allow our citizens to achieve some of those discounts that they're achieving in other states.
Very good.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Director Hendricks.
Mr. Moore, could you tell me if Adams Towing Service is still connected with the city for towing of cars? The reason why I ask, I see so many other tow trucks passing and so many wrecks on Roosevelt Road. Is he still with us? You gonna check?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Move to adjourn, Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
I had asked,
Discussion on the motion to adjourn, Director Adcock.
I had asked after Doris to ask the city manager for something.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Moore, I understand that at the CAP meeting last week, there was discussion about the panhandling, and there was some ideas of new ways to address that problem. And since that is one of the biggest problems that our neighborhood people see in the city, could you get us a memo on what is going to be done, how it's going to work with the problem? Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter, in that vein, My colleague over here, Director Fortson, took a vacation to Destin and said there was not one single panhandler in Destin, Florida. Would you check with the city of Destin and see what they're doing relative to panhandling, please? Mr. Moore, you might also help Mr. Carpenter with that.
What part of town did he
Staff
travel?
people. Pardon?
Ask him what part of that area did he travel?
Well,
Did he
he,
go to the ghetto?
well, it's a nice weather down there, so I suspect that it would be attractive to panhandlers.
Vote on the
All right, motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. We're in adjournment.